Hi, good morning. It is SharRon Jamison, the CEO and founder of the Jamison Group. And happy holiday to many of us, and also happy end of the month. What I'm going to do is to take this and share it to my personal page and I hope that you can join me as we talk about the importance of cultivating our own inner circle. Hey, Crystal, good morning. I'm going to share this to my page. Let me see. There we go. I should be sharing. Well, anyway, I want to say good morning to everyone, and I hope that if you can't look and join me now, that you can share on the replay. And I want to talk about something first. I want to say happy Women's Month and just congratulations to all the women, and thank you to all the women who participated in the Women's Month program event. I have never seen so many powerful visionaries, leaders, talented women coming to share their gifts. Hey, John. And I'm so grateful that people share their gifts and share their talents and share their know-how with so many of the group members. And so for all the speakers, thank you. I celebrate you. I salute your power and your grace and your genius. And thanks so much again for sharing so willingly and so generously with all of us. So as we end Women's Month, I want to talk about cultivating our inner circle. Because what I find, not only in corporate America, but in ministry, I find that so many of us are follower and fan rich, but we're so friendship poor. And we are so friendship poor that I find that so many times people are living lives of such loneliness and such deficit because they don't have a safe place where they can be their authentic self. Hey, Trina, to be who they are without their social masks, without their public personas, to be who they are without all their impressions and their representatives. And what I find, I don't care how extremely a professional and successful person is, I find that people are lonely, that they don't feel like they have allies, that they don't feel like they have a safe place where they can reach out and ask for what they want, and also to bring their entire self, their favorite but their flawed self, their genius and issues where they're not as strong. So today I usually teach this class in a workshop format, but I just wanted to lift up 5 things today for us to consider as we are cultivating our inner circle, because our inner circle has to be cultivated. We have to develop it. We have to nurture it. If we are seed, we have to make sure that we are nurturing our relationships with love and care and empathy and concern, all those wonderful things that help people feel good about themselves, but also help them feel good about being in connection with us. Because people will not hang around if they don't feel honored, if they don't feel celebrated, if they don't feel respected for who they are and also for who they are not. So I want you to, if you have a piece of paper, to identify 5 good areas, 5 good ways to cultivate our relationship, so we can have relationships where we can each wear our crown and where we can celebrate the crowns of our sisters. So the first element for us to consider when we are thinking about cultivating our relationships, so our relationships provide help, hope, and healing, because all of our relationships should help us do something better and help us inspire us, and they should also heal us, because we all have those broken places. One is that for our relationships to be cultivated, we have to bring a spirit of clarity. And what I mean by that is that it's important for us to enter into our relationships knowing who we are and knowing who we are not. Knowing who we are, knowing who we are not. Because the truth is, when we know who we are, we can to bring to the relationship our strengths, be aware of our weaknesses. we can know what we are giving, what we can share. Because many times people want to know, what do people get when they get you? And for us to understand what we have to offer and what we have to share, we have to know who we are. We have to be able to walk in our power, walk in our strength, and to walk in our areas of insecurity, honestly. So we have to have a spirit of clarity, but we also have to be committed to understand that we will become more clear about who we are, because it's only in relationships do we understand all the different parts of ourselves. Only in relationships are we exposed to parts of ourselves. Only in relationships do we get to experience every aspect of ourselves. So we go into a relationship with a sense of clarity, knowing who we are, but we always have a sense of clarity, understanding that we are going to evolve, we're going to grow, we're going to discover, we're going to have an open mind, open heart, and open spirit to see who we are on very different and on a variety of levels. So we have to have a spirit of clarity to understand who we are. The second thing we have to cultivate that inner relationship, our inner core, is have a clarity of what we really want in a relationship. I think sometimes we are often dissatisfied in our relationships because we don't know what we want. We don't know what we need. We have not really understood read our own owner's manual on who we are and how we function and what brings us alive and what makes us soar, what makes us sink, and what ignites us and what excites us. And since we don't know who we are, we don't really know what we need. And if you don't know what you need, you can't ask for what you want. So we get into these places with people and we play these guessing games, or we expect people to play guessing games with us. And so we end up dismantling or mismanaging our relationships because we don't know who we are and we don't know what we want. It's so important to be okay by understanding who you are and who you're not, and being okay with being needing, ing, and not being needy. Why? Because being needing is fine. It's okay to know what you need and to have desires, but it's not okay to be needy, because being desperate is a repellent, and people run from desperate people because desperation has an energy that's suffocating, an energy that's stifling. Is an energy that's associated with that feels toxic. So we have to enter in relationships to cultivate in relationships with our inner circle. Have a spirit of clarity. Who am I? And who am I without my stories, right? And who am I without my stuff, my education, my goods, my insignias, my credentials, all those things? Who am I authentically? And that is one of the ingredients, one of the prerequisites for entering into a healthy relationship with people. Who are you? Who are you? Who are you not? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And also, what do you want? What do you need? What do you hope for to be in this connection with this person? What are you hoping to build? What are you hoping to create? What are you hoping to grow? What is the objective of a relationship? So that's the first thing. The second thing we have to do to develop and cultivate our relationships with people is to have courage. It is so important when you are trying to do anything of significance to have courage. And being in a relationship with a person is a courageous act. Now, I want you to write down the acronym EASE. EASE. Because one of the challenges that happens, we don't interact with each other from a place of courage. We fall into this place called ease, which means that E stands for we start to interact and engage and connect with each other from a place of expectation, which is dangerous. It's important that if you desire to have a healthy relationship with people, we don't interact or engage from a place of expectation. We engage from a place of expression, meaning that I need to ask for what I want. But so often, if people are not courageous enough to share their desires, they will always walk and work with people from a place of expectation. And expectation sounds like you should do this. You would have done this. You could have done this. That's the language of expectation. And anytime we interact with a person, with people, from a place of expectation, we don't provide a foundation for our relationship to grow and evolve. Nobody wants to be imprisoned by somebody else's expectations or by somebody else's paradigms. So E is for expectation. The next place that we have to be careful is that we don't engage with our inner circle from a place of assumption. Assumption is, I thought you were going to do this. I thought you were going to do that. When we are courageous and when we are interact with each other from a place of respect, we don't interact from a place of assumption. We ask each other. And in that spirit of asking, we are approaching people from a place of curiosity and not from a place of condemnation or critique. That is where people feel welcomed, where people feel valued, where people feel heard and seen. Nobody wants to engage with a person when you always are making assumptions about what they should do or how they should perform, or expectations of what they should deliver, how they should behave. Those are places, really, tactics of cowards, not of the courageous. The courageous ask questions. The courageous have explanations. The courageous have expression. They don't expect. They don't assume. And the third thing we have to do is to make sure that we don't operate or interact from each other from a place of silence. Nothing kills relationships more than silence. When we lack the courage to say our truth, we interact with people from a place, again, ease of silence, and all we do is grow in resentment. We grow in hostility, in anger, because we're not saying what we need to say, and we're not saying what we feel, and we're not sharing our truth. Nothing kills relationships greater than silence. And when we don't say what we need to say, the feelings don't go away. The feelings just go underground. And when they go underground, they create a sense of toxicity or toxic energy in the relationship that creates a place of lies, a place of deception. It creates a place of untruth, a place of betrayal. It provides the seed for us to interact with each other from a place of being disingenuous. We have to say what we need to say and learn how to say it in a way from a place of being diplomatic and versus being a place of being degrading. So that is the S. The last E is enemy. We have trouble engaging with people when we don't handle our internal enemies. I call it your ghosts. Your ghosts don't get to come to the group. I always tell people, don't let your ghosts gather with the group. Don't let your ghosts gather. Hey, Shannon. And so we got to be so careful when we are interacting with people that we don't let our ghosts from the past start to bring toxicity or problems into our new relationships. And that happens when we don't heal from our past. But dealing with our ghosts from our past, our enemies, our inner critics, takes a place of courage. It takes courage to look at our enemies in the face, our doubts, our insecurities, our places where we feel inadequate and insufficient, our places where we feel inept or impotent. It takes courage to face ourselves. But if we don't interact from a place of courage, we will interact with our inner circle from a place of ease. Hey, Shannon and Katrina, which means that we will interact with each other from a place of expectation and not exploration or expression. We will interact from a place of assumption and not from a place of ask or inquiry. We will interact from a place of silence instead of saying something what we need and what we say. Or we will interact from a place of our enemies. Our ghosts will come to the group versus healing ourselves and healing our souls. So we have to say, when we are not able to cultivate healthy relationships, the question is, are we interacting from a place of courage, or are we interacting with each other from a place of ease? A cowardice is another way to say it. Disingenuous. So if we're going to have healthy relationships with each other, we have to say, are we interacting from a place of clarity, of knowing who we are, knowing what we need, knowing what we want, knowing our goal, our desire, our objective of a relationship, and are we interacting, engaging from a place of courage, meaning that we cannot interact with each other from a place of ease. Dis-ease. We want to interact from each other from a place of courage. The third way that's important for us to develop healthy relationships with each other is to really know how to communicate with each other. Now, here's the challenge. Just because we know how to talk does not mean we know how to communicate. And it's unfortunate that everywhere we look, we don't see a lot of healthy communication. We see people engaging with each other in ways that don't strengthen the connection, in ways that are sometimes borderline belittling and degrading and borderline undercutting. And so we want these relationships, but we don't realize that our inner circle, developing friendships, to require us to have developmental skills, communication skills. And just because you can communicate in a platform or on in a pulpit doesn't mean that you have good one-on-one communication. And those are very different skills. So I wish there's a whole many ways that I can talk about this, but I want to just talk about two with communication. I call it, are we using a language of love? Are we using a language of love when we interact with each other? And I want to give you an example. Everywhere we look, we hear people talk about, and we read about, we hear all over the media that no is a full sentence. Absolutely it is. Yes, absolutely it is. But I want to suggest that, are we saying no in a way that allows the connection to grow? That's what I always ask my clients. Are you saying no in a way that allows the connection to grow? I'm going to give you an example of the difference in how it looks. Hey, Regina and Katrina. Somebody can say, for example, SharRon, will you like to come to dinner? I can say no, which is fine, and I'm all in my right to do, but does that strengthen the connection? Or I can say, no, I can't come to the dinner, but I know it's going to be wonderful because I heard you are an amazing cook. Now, I answer the question the same way both times. But what the second example does is to allow a person to say, no, I can't go, but I still see you. No, I can't go, but I still affirm you. No, I can't go, but I still acknowledge you. I see your gifting. So when we say no, even though there's all this media hoopla that no is a complete sentence, it is, but does the way you say no deepen and strengthen the connection? I think here's another example. If someone says, SharRon, you know what, will you come to my party? Of course I can say no. Or I can say, girl, I cannot come to your party, but I know it's going to be epic. You throw the best parties in the world. Now, saying that little part, what is that going to help? It's not going to hurt at all. But what it does is to affirm that person that says, I can't come, but I still see that you're talented. You always want to make sure a person leaves you better than when they came to you, if you really want to cultivate a relationship. And we have to say that when you leave me, do you feel better about who you are? When I say no, do you know that I say no to the action, but I'm not saying no to who you are in my life? And there's a difference. It's called the language of love. But we don't see that a lot. So we think that we just can say no because we see people on social media. No is a full answer. Yes, it is. But is there a way to say no so that leaves a person feeling more valued, more seen? And if so, that is how you strengthen and cultivate the relationships. Even, for example, with my work. I work in the pharmaceutical industry, and with my clients at work, my other job, I don't just say no, I can't give you that. I will say something, no, I can't do something. I can't do that, but I know that getting high service is important to you, and that's my desire, is to give you high service. Now, I still said the same thing. So what am I saying? I'm saying that we have a right to say no. But if you're going to cultivate relationships that last, there's a way to say no that still allows the connection to grow. And that's what we want to do. We want to cultivate a relationship. That means by nurturing people, even when you can't do what they want you to do, you still can elevate them and celebrate them, and to let them see and let them hear that you see their genius, and acknowledge them and celebrate them and affirm them. Every time somebody leaves your presence, they should leave feeling better about who they are. And if you can do that consistently, you will develop relationships, but also you will develop loyalty. You will develop relationships in a way that people will undergird you and love you and support you, because our most human need is to feel seen and heard. And so, yes, you can say no, but are you saying no in a way that allows the relationship to grow? All the stuff we hear about the media, I don't think it's healthy to say no. That's all I have to say. Well, really. So I want to challenge you and say, are you cultivating a relationship by allowing people to hear no to whatever the request is, but hear yes to their value? And those are two different things. So just know that even though we are communicating, does not mean, even though you're a good presenter, doesn't mean that you're a good communicator, which means that you have to practice communicating, and especially when the stakes are high. I think sometimes we are becoming more proficient at computer skills, but as we get more proficient at computer skills, we're becoming weak at our communication skills. But it's the interaction, the one-on-one that strengthens our relationship. You don't get close over the computer. You get close in conversation. So the question is, am I developing and strengthening my communication skills so I can develop healthy relationships of substance and not just relationships over the internet? And that's something that we have to practice and practice and practice and practice and practice. And you never arrive at communication skills. You can only get better, better, better. But you could only get better if you know who you are, clarity, and you have courage to do all those things like asking questions and expressing your needs are really, really important. So that's three. The fourth thing, I'm going late. The fourth thing I want us to think about, to cultivate healthy inner circles so we are not friendship poor, is to how do we handle conflict? Now, this is a challenge. Our ability to handle conflict not only will impact us individually, but will impact us in our business world. If you want to go global, you have to be comfortable with handling and interacting with people who are different than you are in your culture, class, gender, sexual orientation, faith, ability, and the list goes on. So how do we do that? How do we get okay with conflict? How do we disagree in a way and still be diplomatic without degrading? How do we do that? What are the words or the language of conflict so that we can stay engaged even when we disagree? Now, I have to say this. Conflict is something that we have to practice, because many relationships break down because people don't know how to navigate conflict. Conflict is natural. Conflict is healthy. In fact, a conflict is not an invitation to fight. It's an invitation to build. It's an invitation to get informed. But how do we do that? I want to say this. When we are dealing with I love what you said. Yes, executive conversation and coaching is so important. So how do we deal with conflict? I want to say this. There's language around conflict that I want to give you an example of what that could look like. Many times we use words that I think we should take out of our vocabulary, words like but. Because what but is an eraser, and it negates everything that a person says. For example, SharRon, I would do this, but. SharRon, that's a good idea, but. As soon as a person hears but, guess what? They're not hearing anything else you say. And it sets up the relationship or the conversation or the exchange to be adversarial. Another word is however, because all however is a but with a tuxedo, right? However, or nonetheless, our language is important. But all we have to do is to change but and change it with and. For example, if you disagree with someone, it's a way to address it is to say, if I understand what you're saying, I hear that you're saying blah, 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 blah. I understand that. And I want to offer a different perspective. Now, all you're doing is offering a perspective without negating what they're saying. Or you can say, you know what? I think I understand what you're saying. Can you walk me through it? It's important that I see it through your eyes. Conflict. Or you can say, I understand what you're saying, but let me share how I'm looking at it. Now, we're doing the same thing. We're handling conflict. Now, it might get to a point where you both get to a place where you just don't agree, right? And if you don't agree, right, Regina, knowledge is important. In the word but is it shuts you down. If you don't agree, this is how we can do it. I have been in negotiations that almost get shut down. Now, so what you have to change the conversation. So I would start if I'm in a place where it's a stalemate, I would say, you know what? It looks like we see this differently. But just let's talk about what we do agree on. Of the conversation, right? You're changed by saying, you know what? I see that we see this differently, but so you can say, I see that we see this differently, and I want you to know that your perspective is important. Or you can say something, I see that we feel differently on this. Let's talk about the places where we are on one accord. It's all about the languaging. It's all about how can we have language around that both people feel valued and heard and celebrated. We don't have to make someone wrong just to be right. And you don't want to be right at all cost. If you put a situation, you say something and it lands in someone's face, you're going to face it again and again and again. So the question is, how can I let this person know that maintaining their dignity is important to me? How can I let a person know that their feelings are important to me? Even if we disagree, how can I let a person know that I honor their thought process, even though my thought process is different? Because if we're going to develop healthy businesses and deal with our clients and develop a healthy inner circle, our ability to handle conflict in a way where both people feel heard and celebrated. We don't have to demonize someone because we disagree. We don't have to dehumanize someone because they disagree. How can we be mature enough and spiritual enough and loving enough to find a place where we both can coexist, even if it means that we disagree? And that's where we walk into a place of spirituality and maturity. And the last thing, so we have clarity. We have to be clear about who we are and who we are not. We have to be willing to walk in courage. And that means that we cannot have the acronym EASE in our conversation. We have to be okay with communicating and knowing that we have to be able to communicate in a way that preserves your dignity and allows another person to preserve their dignity. We have to learn how to say no in a way that allows the connection to grow. We have to learn how to handle conflict in a way that preserves the relationship and understand that conflict is healthy, and to practice dealing with conflict, because we only get good at dealing with conflict and verbalizing conflict, and we only get good at negotiation with practice. It's so interesting. I hear people want to practice everything else, but we don't want to practice engaging with people. But the higher the stakes, the more you have to practice. I never go into a setting. I don't care if I'm practicing giving a presentation or negotiating a deal and I'm shooting from the hip. When you shoot from the hip, it says that you don't respect your work, nor do you respect the interaction. And I think we have to look at that. The last thing we have to talk about is connection. The question that we have to ask ourselves is, who are we bringing to the relationship, and who are we being in the relationship? Who are we bringing to the relationship, and who are we being in a relationship? Two different questions. Why? I find that very high-performing, successful people will bring a successful person to the relationship, and then something happens in that relationship that they start being someone else. I will give myself as an example. In corporate America, I was bringing a very confident person into my managerial and leadership responsibilities in my early 30s. So I was bringing that person, but I was being a tyrant when I was an early manager, and I was being a tyrant because I was insecure. So I was bringing proficiency, but I was also being a brat. And we have to think about how are we bringing, who are we bringing, and who are we being? Why? Because we are different people in different settings, and we are different people with different people, and part of our personality gets more expressed or less expressed in different types of relationships. When we think about that, our relationships are incubators where we grow. Our relationships are classroom where we learn. Our relationships are hospitals where we heal. Our relationships are places where we get challenged and checked. Our relationships play a variety of roles in our life. So it's important to understand that even though you are bringing a person, one part of you are bringing your whole self into a relationship, in that relationship, something about you might get triggered. And some things that we get triggered, we're not even aware of until they get triggered. So we always have to ask ourselves in all of our relationships, I know who I went into this relationship being, but how am I being in this relationship? Am I being triggered in this relationship? Is something in me, is something about my past pains being triggered in this relationship? Is something about my feelings of inadequacy being triggered in this relationship? Yes, I brought one person, but who am I being? And when we can sit back and analyze how we are showing up in a relationship, we give ourselves an opportunity to see ourselves clearly, one, but we also, if we are entering into a relationship in a very confident posture, we allow people to let them tell us how they experience us. Why? We can never be our best selves by ourselves. We all have blind spots. So we always are relying on people to help us see how we are showing up. And that's why it's so important to only have confident people around you. Because if not, you won't have a good mirror to let you see how you are being. And that's why it's important to be around confident people. I say that I will only be around women who are powerful. I wear my crown, and I will only let other women be around who wear their crown. Why? Because I need powerful mirrors to help me see me so I can be better, so I can be stronger. And we never become our best selves by ourselves. But you can never become your best selves if you are not bringing a confident person to the relationship, and if you don't give yourself permission to learn and to relearn and to unlearn. If you're not strong enough, and if you're so emotionally fragile that you can't take and can't hear and can't accept feedback from people who love you. So if we're going to cultivate healthy relationships, if we're going to cultivate a strong inner circle, if we're going to attract who we need in our lives, and if we're going to be reflections of who we need and who we want and who we desire, the questions we have to ask ourselves: one, Are we clear about who we are? And are we clear about what we need? And are we clear about what we desire, what we hope for from this relationship? Do we know what we're trying to create? Do we know that what we're trying to build? Do we know that what we're trying to break down? Do we know what we are trying to focus on? Do we understand the goal of this bond? And every bond, every engagement, every connection should have an objective. We shouldn't just randomly hook up with people. There should be reasons why. And that's why I believe that our purpose should always pick our people. Everybody in my life is a part of my purpose. I don't have stray friends in my life, especially my inner circle, because I believe that my purpose is so important. And I also believe that somebody else's purpose is so important that we need to have special people in our lives. So clarity. 2, courage. Are you operating from a place of courage? And if you're not operating from a place of courage, you can never have deep relationships. Having a deep relationship is an act of courage. Is an act of allowing yourself to be vulnerable and to be authentic and to have an open head, open heart, open mind. It's a way of sharing and being and sharing sacrificially with someone. It's a way of honoring yourself in the midst of your relationship and honoring your needs as well as the needs of others. If you want to have cultivate good relationships again, you have to know how to communicate. You have to know the language of love. And that has to be part of our lexicon, our language and our messaging. Every communication, even when you have to deliver hard news, the question that's important to ask yourself, am I leaving that person in a better place? Am I leaving that person understanding that I see them, that I hear them, that I acknowledge them, that I celebrate them? Even if I disagree, do they feel seen by me? Because our heart's desire is to feel seen and heard and loved. And then the 4th thing, can I handle conflict? Am I willing and mature enough to be in a space where a person doesn't agree with me? Or am I so fragile that everybody has to do what I do and like what I like and love how I love to be my friend? Because the truth is, everybody doesn't have to be kin with you or skin with you to win with you. And if we expect people to be carbon copies or copycats of who we are, we won't have the friends that we need, but we won't have the diversity that we need to grow. Our relationship should look like gardens and not ghettos. That means that we should have people who are very different types of people with different skills, different competencies, different genius zones, different ways of being in the world so that we can grow. Because remember, you grow by exposure, you grow by learning, you grow by having access to different things and different people. And then the last thing is connection. How are you connecting with people? Who are you bringing to the table? Are you bringing your best self? And are you willing to bring a self that can still be molded and shaped? Because we are always our teachers and students to each other. You are simultaneously a teacher and a student. And so you want to come to a relationship with a sense of honesty, but a sense of humility that you need to grow and that you are pouring into them and they're pouring into you. The relationship should be a reciprocal and mutual. It should not be opportunistic and parasitic. And so the question is, are you in this place where I'm connecting and bringing my best self, but also am I aware that even if I'm bringing my best self, I'm not being my best self because I'm being triggered. Remember, bringing and being are 2 different things. So the question is, yes, I'm bringing my best self, but am I being my best self, or am I being triggered to be something that I am not? Am I being triggered in a way that illuminates or highlights that I need to heal in a different aspect of my life? So I hope this was helpful. I hope that we challenge ourselves as women, as people, to cultivate different relationships. And I hope you just think on these things. There's so much more to it. I just, because this is a whole workshop that I do, but I wanted just to leave some seeds for us to consider about our inner circle, because none of us can live life alone. Success happens in isolation. Everything happens in community. We are hardwired for connection. But if we don't have the tools to connect, you will find yourself lonely and isolated and alienated And spiritually, when you are alienated, you are prime target for the devil to do the devil's work. We need community to grow and to be strengthened and to be helped in the ebbs and flows of life. So I hope that this gives you something to think about, something to chew on. I also hope it gives you something to consider. We deal with this a lot in the class Dare to Be Me. I break these things down in greater detail. I share some of the aspects that I do with my executive coaches when I deal with many leaders, because I'm still in corporate America now. And I do a lot of coaching with other ministers, but also a lot of leaders. And we all are leaders in our own way. And I think that if we could understand that on this journey called life, we're always learning. You never will reach this utopia of being a good communicator. You're always growing. You're always developing, because the more you know, the more you realize that you have to learn. The more you know, the more you realize that you have to learn. The more you know, the more that you realize you can grow. I want to leave you with this. We don't reap what we say. We reap what we sow. We reap what we sow. So when we sow good relationships, we can have healthy relationships. But the sowing starts internally first. The sowing starts in getting ourselves right first. The sowing starts by clearing our mind and cleaning our heart and cleaning our soul. The sowing starts by looking in the mirror first and say, God, it's me standing in the need of prayer. Because out of our growth, when we heal, when we grow, we create greater capacity to love. We create greater space for joy. We create more space for engagement. When we heal, we create capacity, greater capacity to love ourselves. And the more we love ourselves, it allows us to extend and to share and to engage others in a more loving way. So thanks so much for staying with me, Annette and Trina and Katrina and Regina. I hope this gave you some, provided some seeds of thought. Happy Women's Month. Let's go out and help and support each other and help each other build our businesses and build our lives and build our homes and build our capacity to be our best selves. And let's continue to challenge ourselves so we can keep bringing and speaking and expanding our capacity to be people, to be leaders, to be nurturers, because it is time for us to be our best selves. And remember, one of the ways to be our best selves is to keep growing our interpersonal skills. Our interpersonal skills. Just because you know how to talk doesn't mean you're communicating. And the more you can grow your skills, the deeper the conversations you can have, the deeper you can share, the deeper you can listen, the deeper you can show empathy, the deeper you can show compassion. And when you can show compassion, empathy, and when you can listen and allow people to be vulnerable and authentic, you heal them, but also you heal yourself. Blessings to you always, and thanks so much. And hope to see some of you in the Dare to Soar Higher group, but also hope to see some of you in the Dare to Me coaching class, which starts at the end of April. Thanks so much, and blessings to you always. Happy holiday.